All right. Well, thank y'all for having me. Like Larry was saying, I'm with Clemson Regulatory, not Extension. A lot of times that gets confused, and I do a lot of different things than what Extension does. We look for pest problems, invasive issues, diseases, but we also enforce the honeybee laws and the state bee regulations. And the main topic that I want to talk to you about today are issues moving honeybees, bringing bees into South Carolina and taking bees and moving them out of South Carolina. Because there are state bee laws that we do have in South Carolina that other states have similar bee laws, and I try to respect other states' bee laws, and I expect them to try to respect ours as well. So what I'm looking forward to is working with more beekeepers that don't know what I do, that aren't familiar with me or some of the inspectors that work with me. Because the one main thing that I want you to realize is, because I am a state bee inspector, I'm not a bad guy. So there's a state bee law, and then there's the state bee regulations. And instead of going through and reading word for word, I'll just kind of briefly summarize brief sections. I'm not going to go through and cover the entire bee laws in every single section, because some sections talk about diseases and pest problems. The main area that I would like to discuss with y'all today are the movement of honeybees. So, when you bring bees into South Carolina, how many people have contacted me and said you've brought bees into South Carolina? There's a few people in here, but there's a lot of people that haven't. And we're not talking about, I'm going to come out and take your bees, I'm going to come out and arrest you. So that's not what I do. That's not what I'm about. I'm here to protect the honeybees. I'm here to protect you as a beekeeper. And I'm here to protect your neighbor beekeepers. We're talking queens, packages, nucs, colonies, even fixtures. That's what it says in the bee law. These laws have been, is it kind of fading in when I'm talking? I just kind of got some weird feedback. But anyways, the laws that are on record have been, the last time they were updated was 1991. So this was well before I ever got involved with agriculture, horticulture, and beekeeping. But, so, do y'all want me to read these sections word for word? All right. So, when you bring bees into South Carolina, that's queens, that's packages, that's nucs, that's colonies, that's fixtures. Those bees, those fixtures are supposed to be inspected by that state they're coming from. So say like packages coming out of Georgia. Most of the suppliers of packages in Georgia are inspected by the Georgia Department of Agriculture. So what's supposed to happen, you're supposed to contact me. I need to get numbers of what you're bringing in so that I can issue you an entry permit.
Wow, that's interesting.
A lot of times the package producers only have like a little small certificate that they're sending with bees. They're not sending out a full page certificate. And I'm not talking about every single beekeeper in this room contacting me if you are a member of an association and your association has gone in and y'all gone in together and bought packages. I'm talking about the association and then issuing one permit. And what I'm trying to do is make every single beekeeper play by the same rule. And to me, it doesn't matter if you have 1 hive or 1,000 hives. You're a beekeeper. If you call me, I'm going to help with it. When you contact me about an entry permit, we don't do inspections on entry permits with bees coming into South Carolina because they have been inspected by the state that they're coming from. So there's no need for us by law to go out and inspect those bees. If you suspect you have a problem, you can call me, and myself or one of my fellow inspectors, we will most certainly come out and try to help you the best we can. Does anybody have any questions about bringing bees into South Carolina. I brought business cards. So just come up and see me afterwards, and I've got business cards that I'll give to whomever. I know Cynthia has my contact information that should be up on the State Association website, so you can find my contact information that way. My office, I'm located in Spartanburg County, but I oversee basically the entire state. And just to give you a quick, brief background, I've been in regulatory, this is going on my 9th year. My background's commercial horticulture. I accepted and kind of foolishly agreed to do the bee inspections about 4 years ago. And so since then, I've become a beekeeper myself, and I've walked in a lot of your shoes. So the main goal that I've had on myself is I had to learn about bees and get coworkers that are interested in inspecting bees also trained up. And so I'm not the only inspector in the state. So, I'm not talking like if you're in Charleston, I'm going to come down and I don't have time to travel all over the state anymore. But I'm in the process of trying to get fellow inspectors trained up. I noticed there was another hand.
Where did you get that associated profession?
Sorry, so what?
Associated
This form is issued by me. This is a state permit to bring bees in. So when you contact me, just your association contact, this can be done through a phone call, through an email. So it's simple. It's not like I have to come out and meet with you and physically get all that information. But you contact me and we'll go from there. It's a real simple process. I know, David, can I use you as an example? David, as an example, David McFawn took bees to Georgia this past winter to overwinter. Went through this process, got the bees inspected, which I'll talk about in a minute, but he's also in the process of getting them inspected in Georgia. It's pretty painless. Wouldn't you agree? And so any of the other beekeepers that have had me come out and do this, if they're in the room, please tell your counterparts, your fellow beekeepers, that I'm not a bad guy. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Do you like Africanized bees? Do you like Africanized bees? Yeah. Well, every beekeeper in here is concerned about Africanized bees. When you order queens from Texas, guess what you're doing? You're possibly bringing in Africanized genes. And that's why this queen rearing program that the Beekeeper Association is doing, that's why this is important. Because if you get South Carolina genes, South Carolina stock, you're not going to have to go through Texas. Any other questions?
Now, if I understand you correct, I've got two packages coming in from Georgia on April 9th. When they come in, I'm supposed to call and get that permit too?
Correct. It's crazy. I believe
I
me.
just want to make sure.
You're understanding me correctly. That's what the state laws say. I didn't make the laws, the regulations. That's not me. Previously,
Is that on the web or you send that?
this is not on the website. This is not something that you can, just make up yourself. This is something that I give to you. That's a permit that comes through my office or me that says, okay, we're good to go. I saw a hand here, but there was a question over here first.
How much foul have you seen in this?
It's here. It's probably here, and I'm sure there's probably several beekeepers in here that aren't aware that they have it. Last year, there was only one positive case of foul brood from a report from Beltsville, Maryland that I got. That's not saying that a beekeeper in the state suspected that they had foul brood and destroyed that beehive on their own and didn't contact me. The year before, there were 6 positive cases. 2 beekeepers had to destroy 200 beehives. American foul brood is a regulated pest. It is something you don't want. That example, those beekeepers treated their beehives with like terramycin every single year. Well, that winter, they changed their recipe or their method of how they were treating, and then the foul brood showed up in 2 of their apiaries. And what that tells me is that they always had foul brood. It was just being masked and covered up and suppressed by terramycin. So foul brood, everybody should be concerned with it.
Is it true foul brood spores live like 99 years?
Yeah, man. Yeah. You know, one of the recommendations prior to me doing or taking on these responsibilities was you destroyed your bees, you torched your bee equipment, your supers, your hive bodies. What if you miss a spot? My thing is you burn it all. And I know that's not the popular answer. I know that's things that people don't want to hear, but 200 beehives that you have to destroy, you know, you're not talking about $100, $200, $500. That's thousands of dollars that these two beekeepers had to destroy, and it was spread rampant in their apiaries. And so I talk about that because if you see and you recognize and you think you have a problem, the quicker you nip it in the bud, you're not going to have to deal with that type of issue. Someone had a...
Well, if you buy your bees from someplace in South Carolina,
I'm going to be talking about that in a minute.
Okay.
You know, there's a couple of different areas I'm going to talk about as far as bringing bees in and even selling bees, because there is a section in the law that does talk about that.
Probably going to be deployed at some point and get ready to take our bees. How much time do you need for us to contact you and let us know?
I'm very flexible. You know, I think the beekeepers that I've worked with, I think it's safe to say about myself that I'm Johnny on the spot. You know, it's very difficult if you contact me a day or two before. You know, a week or two, 4 weeks. If you have an advance notice, that's definitely the best. But I'm flexible and I'm willing to work with beekeepers. And so this situation, the time varies, but I'm always willing to work with someone. Go ahead back here first. I don't think it does. You have resistance that builds up. Terramycin doesn't. Everything I've read, everybody that I've spoken to, terramycin does not get rid of foul brood. All it does is suppress the presence of it there. There's a hand up. No, everything I'm talking about, this stuff is free. There's no fees associated with anything I do. So I'm sorry, David. You're out of luck with money. But there's no fee right now in the state with any of the certificates, the permitting, the inspection work that I do. And if I were a beekeeper, I'd be calling me because I'm here to help. So if
you're bees from that state and they don't have the same law we have about it, then we're subject to getting
there's only 1 or 2 states that don't have a bee inspector.
But they all have similar regulations for
Yeah. Yes. I'd have to go through and look at every single law to say yes or no to that. But it's safe. There's bee laws in every single state. Yes, sir. Some of them vary, is what they do. Yes, sir.
So, everybody moving bees in and out of the state is supposed to notify you, and you're collecting this information and cataloging it, putting it on record. Is that information then available in any way, shape, or form?
I plan on making part of that information available because these laws have never really been pursued and figured out. There's no data out there that you can say, okay, beekeeping is this big in South Carolina. So what I'm planning on doing is by these permits, I'm able to go to my bosses and say, last year I issued X number of entry permits for X number of colonies, X number of packages, X number of queens, whatever. that's coming into South Carolina. And at the same time saying, we've issued X number of certificates or X number of colonies, packages, queens, whatever, leaving South Carolina. Because that's part of the problem. Some people aren't aware of how big beekeeping is in South Carolina. And that goes to what Larry was saying, how y'all as a group represent 95% of beekeepers nationwide. And with those numbers, with the data, you kind of start making it a reality to some people that don't really realize how big it is. That's at least my thought behind it. Yes?
If I were to order a queen or a package from out of state, do I need to ask the supplier to send me a record of what their inspection was? Does that help you? Or is that a legal?
As a consumer, I do that. You know, in addition to bees, I'm also a plant inspector. And for me personally, I like to garden. So when I go to a garden center, and let's say I'm buying a rose bush for my wife, I'm not going to buy a rose bush that's ate up with aphids or another insect or full of weeds. Bees are no different than that. I'm only going to buy bees and beekeeping equipment from things and people that I know are not selling me crap. And so it's up to them to show you and give you that they've been inspected. Why not?
It's very reasonable then to ask for documentation.
Absolutely.
With the ship.
You're giving them money, right? So I think if they don't want to give you that, hey, I'm going to find someone else to get my equipment or bees from. That's how I do things. Yes, ma'am.
Would you clarify for me that if I buy my package from my state organization, local chapter, the chapter that's getting the permit?
Yeah, just to make things simple, because, you know, there are 3,000 beekeepers statewide. It's absolutely crazy to issue 3,000 permits. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I'm saying if you're in Mid-State Association, Spartanburg Association, you know, if you're buying packages from a supplier of bees, you know, those are the people that I'm talking about working with and getting the permits for. Not as a member of the local association, you getting a permit. But through that permit, you know that your association has gotten the right paperwork. That's what I'm talking about. Because it's impossible, because there's 46 counties in South Carolina. And for about the first 2.5 years, I covered 46 counties. And I now have other inspectors that are learning about bees, that are getting trained, so I'm getting help. Yes, sir.
What did you do?
When I bought the queen,
It sounds like you hit
whatever
something
you got,
hard.
I give a little certificate also, I couldn't see it. You know, the
Yep.
small things. Is that acceptable?
That's acceptable. You know what what I would do is, okay, this certificate here. I got a little laser. How about that? Okay. Anyways, this top section, that's what state the bees are coming from. This top right section, that's just some general information. But here I can, you know, I'm not really worried about like packages and things like that, because some of these queen and package certificates don't have that detailed information. But if it's like a colonies coming from New York, it's got when they were inspected, how many were inspected, if any pest problems were found. But here's the information that I need. Who you are, who sends you the bees, where you're located, and how many queens, packages, nucs, colonies you're bringing into the state. That's what I'm talking about. I know I'm between lunch, and I know this is a topic that we can keep going on about bees bringing in the state. I'm going to move forward on with the talk, but I'll be here to answer any questions throughout the day. The bee regulations. The bee laws are different from the bee regulations. You know, I talked with Cynthia earlier this morning. I'm going to give her a PDF file of the bee laws and bee regulations so that she can put those on the website so that you can have those at your fingertips. I did make some copies. I have a few copies, but I don't have enough for everybody in the room. So I do have a handful of copies. Bee regulations. this one section here, this talks about the sale, bartering, or shipment of queen bees and their attendant bees. So queen bees and their attendants, that's all bees. As workers, as drones. And if you read the law, it says, within the state is prohibited, except when accompanied by a current certificate or a copy thereof from the commission. I represent the Plant Crop Pest Commission. That's technically the organization that we fall under. There's dates as far as 60-day time frame. Notify me by April 1st. I don't believe in the dates and the time frames. I'm flexible in working with you. So when you look at these laws and you see like a date as far as like a time frame range, don't think that I'm going to say, hey, you're 61 days past notifying me, you got to burn that stuff. That's not how it's going to work. So with this section here, this is talking about if you're selling, if you're bartering, or if you're shipping bees inside the state of South Carolina. So what I've done last year is we don't have a registration requirement. You don't have to certify to register to sell bees with us in the state. But what I've started doing last year is if someone is selling packages, queens, nucs, colonies, and they want me to come out and inspect their bees, their bee yards, and verify that they're free of any disease or pest problems, we'll do that. And what I give the beekeeper is a letter of inspection. And the letter of inspection says, and I know in the back you probably can't see it, so I will read it. The apiaries and bees of XYZ apiary have been inspected by Clemson University's Department of Plant Industry Inspection Program and have been found to be apparently free of diseases and pests of honeybees. And then I have the date or dates that we've done inspections, your information as a beekeeper, and then if anybody has any questions about that, they can contact me. My background, coming from commercial horticulture, I used to manage 23 acres of greenhouse. It was a plant factory. So I was always looking at different certifications, anything that would promote my business. This is something that, if you're getting inspected, you shouldn't have any disease problems. You shouldn't have any pest problems. And it's a way to promote your business. And this is free. There's no fee with this. This section of the bee law is referring to moving bees out of the state to another state, whether for pollination or you're selling bees to beekeepers in another state, or you're simply moving. You still need to get you still need to get them inspected and certified. And this is what I was talking about. It says the beekeeper needs to notify us by April 1st. That's crazy. If you're moving January 1st, contact me. If you're moving October 31st, I'm not going to say, well, I can't inspect you. I can't give you a certificate because it's already past April 1st. So anytime during the year, if you're moving bees out of South Carolina, you should be contacting me. This section of the bee law is talking about the entry permits that we were talking about before. This is talking about what our requirements are in South Carolina. So a bee inspector in Georgia or North Carolina or Florida or New York, this is the information that should be on their apiary certificate that they send me. So technically by law, inspection is required to transport bees across state lines. So the way that I handle this, very few beekeepers, like local state beekeepers, are contacting me. For so long, the migratory beekeepers that come into the state, a lot of attention was given to them and focused on them, where I give any beekeeper the same type of treatment. Sorry about that movie. So the process that I've come up with If you need an apiary certificate to move bees to another state, I have an application that I'd like you to fill out just so that I get all of the information that I need to complete the apiary certificate. Then we come out, we do an inspection, we issue the certificate. The way that beekeeping has changed and exploded, not just in South Carolina, but nationwide, queen producers are here in the state. There's some commercial queen producers that are now here. There's associations that are doing queen rearing. I've come up with some different types of certificates, whether or not you need a full-page certificate or the little individual certificate like they do in Georgia, for example. So like I was saying before, the apiary certificate application, this just gives me the information that I need. Who you are, where you're located, who you're taking or selling the bees to, and where they're going to, and whatever state they're going to. It gives me the information that I need to complete that certificate. This can be done through email, through phone, through mail. I don't hold, I know not all beekeepers like to get on a computer or are familiar with doing email and things like that. That's my preferred method just because of the quickness that I can get something to you, but I don't make someone do it by email if they don't want to. So just like the entry permit for you bringing bees into the state, there's an apiary certificate that we issue for bees leaving the state. That's based off an inspection that Department of Planned Industry has done. And what we do is we put just like the entry permit, your information, your name, your address, where you're located, the name and address of where the bees are going, your contact information as far as phone, email, how many, the quantities of what you're taking out, whether it's I'm shipping 4 queens or I'm taking 1 colony because I'm moving. That's what we put in there. This is just the physical address of where the bees are located, because sometimes beekeepers don't always have the apiary in their backyard. They could be on a farm somewhere. A lot of beekeepers that are the migratory type that are sending bees to California, California will hold a tractor trailer of bees up if I don't have a specific address of where those bees are going, or if I don't have trucking information. So, if you're, a commercial beekeeper sending a lot of bees out, I might get trucking information. That will help you get through an inspection station. And then we have additional declarations as far as these bees have been inspected. This is not an entry permit for bees coming back into South Carolina. Bees coming back into South Carolina, they need to be inspected by that state. This is the example of a package or a queen certificate, where this is just a certificate number that's based off of that full sheet that has your name and the address. And there are some producers that are shipping queens out, as soon as they're ready for multiple months at a time. So I'm not talking about if you're a queen producer and you sell 500 queens, I'm not talking about issuing 500 certificates for that. I'm talking about issuing 1 certificate, and then we'll get this where this is printed off for you, and that can go and be affixed on the outside of that shipping box. This is a tag that I mocked up and made last year. There was a gentleman that relocated from the Maryland area into South Carolina, and he sells bees for sting therapy. And it blew my mind that he has a business where he sells just worker bees to people that will send them and ship them and for sting therapy. And those bees have to be inspected, and because a lot of these diseases can be carried on the bees. But it blew my mind that someone has a business of selling bees in a small box to sting yourself with. It was crazy. And it's like, that's just a sign of how big beekeeping has gotten in South Carolina, because that's never been here before.
All right, let's say you're moving out of state. And contact, come over and do an inspection, and you don't get a clear letter. You're like, okay, there's a little disease problem. You have to treat that, and you come out again and inspect that.
Yeah. Yes. But, you know, and it honestly, I'm not talking about if you have small hive beetles in your beehive, if you have grower mite, you know, those issues, they're there. That's not a regulated pest. The main problem is if it's suspected that it's Africanized bees or an American foulbrood issue. Those are your two main things that would hold up a shipment. You know, it's crazy. California will do it, they've done it this year. They will hold up a tractor trailer load of bees for black sugar ants. They will hold up a tractor trailer load of bees for one small hive beetle larva. And it's crazy. You know, a tractor trailer load of bees can have 450 to 500 colonies on the back of that truck. There's 26 million bees on the back of that truck, and they'll hold something up like that. It's crazy. That's not an answer that I can give you. Someone from the SCBA would be more qualified for that. I've looked at the new website, and I know that they do have a list of companies that sell bee products, whether it's bees, packages, candle making supplies. And I like the new website, by the way. I think it looks really good. I really do like that. And there's probably only, maybe 6 or 7 businesses right now on there. But I gotta tell you, I see what y'all put on Facebook.
Another part of the house.
And I know what goes on in the state. So don't think you're, doing something that you're not making public. And so a lot of these people, don't be surprised if you get contacted by me. And then again, I'm not talking about shutting you down. I'm talking about making you play on the same field that I'm asking everybody else to do. There was a hand over here.
I guess maybe that answers the question. These are laws and regulations.
I didn't make them. These are laws.
Apparently there's a penalty for not.
There is. And I think it's like a fine of like $500 or $1,500. I'm not talking about that. That's not who I am. That's not what I want to do. I promise I'm not. And in any beekeeper that is afraid that I'm going to come out and find you, talk to some of the beekeepers in your clubs that know me, and they will tell you I'm not a bad guy.
On one of the screens up about the bee laws, it said it's illegal to barter, sell, or trade bees within the state. Does that mean that if my package, my queen fails, and I need an emergency bee, I can't get it from somebody in
Yes,
South
the question was if the law of like bartering, selling, if you've got a package or a queen and that fails, or specifically if a queen fails, am I not going to let you get a queen because that's time sensitive? Absolutely not. I'm not talking about, the main thing is the discussion that was earlier about Clemson extension. I'm trying to get some data to give an accurate picture of how big beekeeping is in South Carolina. And if you want changes done, you got to show some people numbers and data. And so that's what I'm talking about doing. And, that section, if the way you read that one section, it talks about if you have a beehive over here and you move it to here, you got to notify me. I got to give you a permit. That's crazy. I'm not talking about anything like that. That definition is vague. Laws are written like that to be vague. I'm not talking about interpreting them crazy. That's crazy interpretation right there. I know y'all have a lot of questions. Keep bringing them. They are. I start getting certificates December from New York. He's talking about a lot of migratory beekeepers that come into South Carolina are coming down from New York and northern states, and there's a hot spot along I-95 from Horry County, Myrtle Beach area, down to Manning, Santee area. And last year, there were roughly 10,000 colonies that were brought into South Carolina from those beekeepers. A lot of those beekeepers then get them and take the bees to California to pollinate almonds. So we go out and they're inspected in New York. I issue them entry permits coming into South Carolina. When they're ready to go out and do almond pollination in California, I go out with inspectors and we inspect those beehives and give them the right paperwork so that they can take their bees to California. Then they come back to California and they build them back up, make splits, do things like that. And then they take the bees back up north. I go back out and do inspections again and then certify those bees going up north. Last year we issued 51 certificates for bees leaving the state of South Carolina, certifying almost 22,000 beehives. So that's a lot. That's not a lot when you talk about commercial beekeeping in Georgia and Florida, but I think that's a lot in South Carolina. That's pretty amazing. That's a lot of colonies. You know, that do I think the bee laws need to be updated? Absolutely. You know, there's things that need to be updated as far as an Africanized bee plan that is not from 1990, but from 2016, because things change. You know, there need to be laws, the laws need to be updated because these were updated in 1991. You know, we get hot and heated in South Carolina when we start talking about rules and regulations and changing things. And that's a long, drawn-out process. My department, we would draft new laws, new regulations, and go try to work with the legislators to do that. I have never been a part of that process, but people in my department that have been involved with other aspects of what we enforce in regulatory,
Oliver, thank you
it's
for
about a
picking
2 to
that
3
up.
year process.
You did a very
So-
good job.
I'm going in the box.
I see that.
I think so, yeah. Nothing yet. You know, these laws that are here, that have been here since 1991. A lot of beekeepers, I've just shocked y'all this morning, I know, by telling y'all what some of these laws are. And a lot of it has to do with communicating that these were laws, these were regulations that have been here for a long period of time, where it should have been done years ago. I can't control that because I was not part of that. I can only do what I'm accountable for now that I'm here.
This is just a curiosity question. A ship that goes from South Carolina to California, is this process replicated at every state border that it goes through?
Not, if bees are shipped across the country, is the process replicated or reproduced in each state they go through. So if you're going to California, we don't issue a certificate for each state that they pass through. It's just the end.
Your certificate is just to get out of South Carolina.
Just get out of South Carolina and go to California. You know, that's not saying, it's not saying, well, I got to give you one because you go I-20 and you're going through Georgia and then through Alabama. You know, nobody does that. I will say, the commercial, only happy cows come from California. California agriculture is so big that a lot of times they do not reciprocate and do things like other states want them to do. So, and what I mean by that is, just in a nutshell, if they have a problem, they don't care if you get their problem. But they care if they get one small hive beetle or one fire ant or one sugar ant, and they'll hold up a load. That's not right. So, I can't control that. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Concerning American foul breed, talked about what the protocol is if a German foul breed is identified, what is done to notify beekeepers in the area, what you do.
Sure. I wasn't going to talk about the diseases and things like that. I was only talking about the movement into and out of South Carolina of bees. But I'm basically, that's the end of my presentation on that, so I can answer those types of questions. But there's not like a protocol in place of notifying beekeepers if your neighbor has American foul brood. There should be, and that's something that we can develop. But I got to tell you, I don't know where all the bee yards are in South Carolina, and a lot of beekeepers like to be secretive of their locations. So, there's no way to know where every single bee yard is located in South Carolina. But if I do follow up with beekeepers when they have American foul brood to go back and talk with them and see what's happened and occurred. One section of the law does talk about quarantining an area where a disease or something is found, and that is, I guess, an area that I could improve on as far as going out and surveying and talking with other beekeepers in that area. And to be honest with you, the main reason why that probably hasn't been done is a lack of manpower. I've been only one person, so it's been hard to do every single aspect of the bee laws. But I've changed that where I've got, including myself, 6 inspectors statewide that are interested in inspecting honeybees. So we've come a long way in a short amount of time. So I think that helped. Does that answer your question, Mark? But we can talk backwards.
Is that something that you encourage beekeepers to do before the week that somebody has American foul brood?
That mapping program, the intent of that mapping program is for pesticides. I do keep if you will, a database of locations that I go out, and when I'm called out by a beekeeper to come out to do an inspection or whatever, I do keep that information. I keep that in-house. I don't share that information. That mapping program could be used as a tool for something like that as well. But hey, man, y'all gotta be willing to work with people. Tell people where you're located in the back. I mean, anything's on the table. That's the suggestion was have like a public service announcement of, say, we're here in Richland County. American foul brood has been found in Richland County. I haven't gotten any reports. I'm just saying that. Is that something that y'all would be willing to look at? Yeah, and I do not give information of where your bees are located, where their bees are located. I don't share that information, and I don't have a problem if I get a report, because I get reports even if you don't contact me. In Belton, Maryland, they send every inspector the reports statewide. I mean, as far as nationwide, as the lead bee inspector, if someone sends a sample in to Beltsville, Maryland, to get analyzed for foul brood or other issues, just because you haven't contacted me, I get those reports. But that's a good thing, because I'm here to tell you, there's been a lot of reports that I don't get called in that are not foul brood. I can promise you. So I don't have a problem sending that information and working with the association.
I just wanted to mention, Master Beekeeping Program we're talking about doing something with the legislative piece for the gentleman back in the back that was asking about what the legislature doing. They're not going to do anything until we take a proactive stance to try to get some of the legislation changed. But remember, when he's dealing with the feds, this is our best line of defense with what Brad's doing for us. The reason I say that is most people here haven't kept bees long enough to remember when states were quarantining themselves during the tracheomites spread across the United States. And if Apis cerana shows up in a package that they were worried about going to California or something like that, when the feds want to shut a place down, Brad's going to be the point of contact to deal with the feds. And so we're effectively, way before Trump wanted to build a wall around the United States, in 1922, Congress built a wall around the United States, and the United States is a quarantine country for the importation of honeybees. So Brad's our point of contact. He's the point of contact with the Fed. We have a voice, but he is our real trust.
You know, and another thing, you know, who all was aware of like the West Columbia updating their bee laws that they were trying to, y'all are welcome. I squashed that for y'all. You know, it's you know, there was a similar situation down in Beaufort. I think I've taken care of that. You know, and you know, the thing that I tell people is, if you have a problem, don't blame me if you haven't contacted me. I can't help you if you don't contact me. I don't want to hear it. So call me. I will work with you.
Let's cut to the chase, folks. We have a situation where Clemson University Extension Service is not really working to solve the issue. Brad's by himself. He needs help. He's not going to get any help until we help him get some more help. So this association needs to go back to format,
Yeah.
update, recognize that if there is an American foul brood outbreak, there's an agricultural watch manual printed. What do you do if there's an avian bird flu hotspot here, there, or there? It's printed. Procedures are laid out. You get people pay attention to
Absolutely.
what needs to happen to help us, and let's move forward.
Yeah, and you know, for me, my personal experience before I got involved in working in regulatory, because I know regulatory is a bad word, believe me. Coming from a commercial background, I always had the impression that, oh, an inspector's a bad person. But, you know, me, speaking for me, I've walked in the commercial world, I've walked in those shoes. So my approach to my job is not that cowboy mentality where I'm out to get you. I promise you. There was a hand up here.
You're talking about the need for updating laws for apiary inspection and control and tracking. And lawmakers aren't going to do it. This is the best platform right here to create that verbiage or whatever.
I will say this. The bee laws, those are updated and changed through the legislative process. Regulations, we can change through the Director of Regulatory Services. We don't have to go through the legislative.
But recommending and actual input into
Sure.
the process, the best place for that to happen is here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I am familiar with that, but you're talking about a regulated pest problem. You cannot move regulated pest problems across state lines. Sorry. You know, there was a beekeeper that wanted to try to use the North Carolina equipment to radiate their equipment. That's not a possibility of moving things across state lines. It's just like with the Master Beekeeping Program teaching some of these diseases and pest problems. You're not going to be allowed to get your hands on a frame or a beehive that has American foul brood in it to teach what it looks like. Can't do that because it's a regulated pest problem. Because I would be very upset if a beekeeper from North Carolina, if we had that equipment, brought it down here and gave this gentleman here foul brood. You'd be upset. You'd be upset if they brought it and you got it. If I can contact North Carolina and see if that's an option. You know, right now, I got to tell you, fire is the proven way of getting rid of American foul brood. Fire will destroy it. Torching a hive body will not destroy it. What if you miss a little corner spot? I I don't know enough about the radiation process to know if that honestly destroys every single spore in there or not. But fire will. I got one question here will come in. Go ahead, Mark. I wasn't aware of that. That's really cool. And I got to tell you, that's going to show how big South Carolina, people are starting to recognize how big beekeeping is in South Carolina. There were two hands up right in here. Yes, ma'am.
Going back to the movement question, if you are looking to order, say, a nuke from Texas or Florida that has a high Africanized problem,
I see that.
when we call in to get that entry permit,
I'm gonna come out and inspect that nuke.
okay, that was going to be my question. If it's a flat out no because of the extreme high risk that there's
If it's
too
coming
much
from,
of a probability
if
of
they're
that
coming from a
squashing
high
before-
risk area, I'm gonna come out and look.
You're going to come to look versus squashing it before the shipment. That's my question. Would you just flat out say, no, don't bring this to Texas at all because it's high risk, or allow them in and then
It's not my job to tell you where you can buy something from. There's plenty enough resources here in South Carolina that why would you want to ship a living organism from Texas to South Carolina that could die? There's a lot of, I'm telling you, I see what y'all put on Facebook. I know how many people are selling nukes and packages and stuff. So, I would never buy a nuke from Texas. I would look for somebody here that's closer to me. But if I get notified that it's coming from an area that I would be cautious, I'll come out and look at that and inspect that. I got a gentleman that just relocated to South Carolina from Florida, only brought in 5 beehives. But I'm going to be calling him to set up the time to go look at his bees. Those bees were inspected in Florida, so he followed the right process of getting permitted. But because I know Florida has Africanized bees, and I know none of y'all want Africanized bees, I'm going to go look at 5 beehives.
And then my other piece to that question is, prior planning before moving out of South Carolina, how far in advance to that departure date can the inspection be?
Most states,
No more than 30 days prior?
30 days is the safest window. California, for these folks that are pollinating almonds, it's a 7-day window. And I can go out and bait the bee yard and bait them for fire ants. That's the main thing that California is concerned about. So that's on a 7-day window. But usually, if it's an individual that's shipping stuff all over the country, Queens or whatever, I'll take those certificates for the whole year. I'll go out and do an inspection or inspections, and if they want me to come out more often, I'll work with that beekeeper and come out as often as someone needs to. So we're close to lunch. My daddy's a preacher, I can keep going. He's retired, so I might be a good replacement for him. But thank y'all for having me.
Green ticket for lunch. Okay, downstairs.